Who I am. Who am I? I'm Ellie Grace, and I'm a 21-year-old self-published author of 15 young adult books living in Northern Virginia. Now that you know who I am, I can tell you how I got here. I was born in D.C., but moved to Morocco a year after I was born for 2 short years. 2 years that may or may not have changed my life. We came back and I started school in Fairfax, Virginia. First preschool, then elementary school. I didn't love school at first. Kindergarten, I hated being away from my family, and on occasion I'd see my sister walking through the hallways, but that wasn't enough. So my mom would write little poems and put them in my lunch every day, just to make me feel better. First grade, there were more words, and I remember forgetting how to spell the word go. One kid said, "How do you forget to spell the word go?" One girl, who was my friend, laughed it off with me. I said it was because I hadn't written all summer. But for some reason, in my head, I could pronounce the word, but I didn't know what letters to use. In 3rd and 2nd grade, more learning, and in 3rd grade, I moved to a bigger elementary school with 2 floors, an elevator, its own circus, a blacktop that wasn't also used as a track, and bathrooms everywhere. My old school only had one set for the whole place. Here, my creativity showed, but also my weaknesses. This school had more homework, tougher grading, more booklets, and better supplies. I used my creativity to show my smarts. I made a commercial for my animal project, a quilt for my book report, and a puppet for my history project. But my grades on tests were bad. My teacher then told my mom that I needed to work harder. I was a good kid, I just wasn't pushing myself hard enough. Well, 4th grade, everything changed. My teacher had a writing assignment, and I did the assignment. Then she asked me to forget what I had written and tell her what I was trying to say. She asked why couldn't I write like that by myself. I said something along the lines of, I didn't know how to get the words out. See, the thing was that I could talk just fine, but writing was horrible. That same year, a poet came in, and I loved it. I wrote a poem that both my teacher and my mom loved and were shocked that I had written. I don't remember the poem, but I do remember their faces. I discovered that other friends of mine were going into smaller classes for help with certain subjects, and I wanted that. I talked to my mom. She decided to talk to my teacher, who also wanted to talk to her. She had noticed that I was missing words and writing letters backwards. She suggested that I get tested, and that's when I found out that I was learning disabled. She was one of the first teachers I had that really tried to get to know the students that she was teaching. She really wanted to help me. She helped me also when I was stubborn about going to the clinic after falling from the monkey bars. I later found out that I had broken my arm. I would go in to break my other arm that same year. There are many things that could have factored into why I had learning disabilities. The fact that I was in Africa learning a different language and then came back to America and forced into just English. But also, my mother has misophonia, which is sensitivity to sound, which many studies have linked to auditory processing disorder, which I was diagnosed with. Auditory processing disorder is when your ears and brains aren't working together. I could hear information, but it was hard for me to remember it. But it was easier to visualize and try to remember it by photomemory rather than by sound, which made putting words down on paper and reading difficult. However I came to have learning disability doesn't matter, because then I knew it was different. I remember being in the minivan with my mom as she's explained to me that I have a learning disability and that it's called LD, and I'm going to have a special thing called an IEP, or Individualized Education Plan, but she seemed worried. She didn't want me to lose my confidence, and I remember telling her that it's a learning difference, not disability. Disability meant that I was going to not be able to do something, but I would be doing everything that all the normal kids were doing. I would just be learning it differently. So, after that, we always tell people that it's a learning difference and not disability. We are not disabled, and to never think that you can't do something that the normal kids are doing. 5th grade was when I learned the fundamentals of writing that would grow over the next years. We used webs to organize our thoughts for papers. Year after year, different webs were used, and in high school we stopped using webs. But I still organized my thoughts with them. Kids always get mad saying that we're never going to use anything that we learn in high school. But that was one thing that helped me become a writer. In middle school, my reading level was greatly improving. People always wanted me to read in class, and that made me feel good. During that time, I was reading like crazy. My parents really liked to read, and every Sunday they'd take me and my sister to Borders. We'd pick out books and read them or buy them or keep them there for another day. I was reading everything I could get my hands on. I loved reading, but my mind was thinking I could probably write a better story. Because I had read so much, I knew all the cliche things. Most books never surprised me. I started writing poetry again. I don't know why, but poetry came back when depression hit. I always loved school after learning about my learning difference. I loved learning because now I knew how to retain the things I couldn't before. And then if I didn't know how to do something or didn't understand, I had somebody to support me. I also made friends easy. I was a natural listener. I listened to people, saw wrong from right. I also saw how much people thought they needed their peers. I had my group of friends, but I also had friends in other groups. It was strange to me how much people cared about what other people thought. They didn't stand up for themselves or confront issues. I couldn't understand that. I defended my friends, but then I was called a liar by the same people because they didn't want to own up to it. So much drama in middle and high school. I battled with having no friends, looking like a loser, or having the friends that I wasn't really sure were ever on my same level. One girl told me that the 1930s got over depression, and so will I, and that I needed to suck it up. What did she know? I ended up being on depression meds and seeing all these doctors, and never really being happy to go to school. You know, some kids, they hate having to wake up early for school, but I hated it because of the people. With depression, you feel horrible all the time, and you don't want to do anything. And this was hard because I worked so hard to get to the level where I enjoyed learning, but it was being wasted. I did end up sucking it up later in high school. I started to think more of my future and less about being stuck here in high school. I stopped taking my medicines and stopped seeing all the doctors to talk about my depression in school because none of that was going to take me out of the situation I was in. I had to make the best of it. So I stopped thinking about hating and about making it. There were teachers at my high school that weren't there for me and didn't support me, but there were also teachers that did support me, that outweighed them. In high school, I had a teacher that was so blessed to have in my life. I had her class halfway through the day in freshman year, which made all the difference. She took the time to listen to my problems with teachers and friends. She was like a second mother that I could go to get a hug from when my day was bad. She cared about me as well as pushed me when I needed it. I remember one time I came to sit with her and two other teachers for lunch, and how much I enjoyed their conversations. I realized that I was more mature than most of the people I hung out with. I also had found a voice in something I enjoyed. I started to speak up for myself and my education. The LD program taught me to speak up because no one was going to know if you didn't say anything. I wrote short stories in one sitting without thinking about it. I would spit it out like a river. One of those stories I wrote my freshman year of high school, which later won an award at the London Book Festival. I never wrote anything again, really, until senior year, when everybody was obsessed with Twilight. So I wrote Crescent Sky to show people that it wasn't hard to write a book about vampires, and I self-published it on CreateSpace.com. People told me it was a big deal. I was featured in my yearbook, the principal congratulated me, but I didn't see the big fuss. I started to realize that book writing was really easy for me. When it came to applying for colleges, I was burnt out. School had been an emotionally draining experience for me, and I wasn't really sure that I wanted to go back to that. I half-heartedly applied to Mason, a school that I wanted to go to since 5th grade. In my mind, I had become an author, and I wanted to continue to be one without college, because I knew that if I went to college, I would have to be there for years, take unnecessary classes, and pay way too much money for something that I already was. So I started to travel a little. I went to South Carolina to stay with family. I went to France on a spring vacation. I went to Texas to stay with family, Boston to see my sister, Los Angeles twice, Vegas, and again to South Carolina, where I continued to write. I've published 14 books since 2010, but that doesn't cover the books that I've written and have yet to publish. I started with a mind that didn't know how to get things out to having a hand that couldn't write fast enough to keep up with my mind. People ask me, where does it come from? How is it so effortless? What inspires you? It's hard for me to answer those questions because everything inspires me to write. People always say, write about me, I'm super interesting. But in actuality, I could probably write a story about them. Any topic, I can figure it out. But where does that imagination come from? How do ideas just come to me like that? I have no idea. Sometimes I'll see scenes in my dreams, and other times I'll see flashes of characters' faces or places, and I'll just write it down, and then it will slowly grow into a whole story. Novel writing is effortless to me because I visualize everything. I've always visualized everything from the start. When I write a book, it's more like a movie that's playing in my head. I can act out what I think should happen in many different ways. And I also have the amazing planning. As I went through my journals that I wrote while being in middle to high school, I found something that I was shocked that I had written but fit so perfectly. I'd like to read that for you now. I really need to keep writing so that I have a book published, and maybe I'll be able to be a leader, a teacher. Through writing, I want to help, but I'm not sure how. Soon, I will be able to support this growing nation and be able to fight for all those with a soft voice and yell for their causes. I guess it's like what my dad says. Ellie, you're going to change the world because you're number one. In my heart, I feel I could, but I don't know how. I will find ways soon enough. I wrote that November 6, 2006. I was 14 then. I think by sharing my story, I will be able to make connections. I will be able to show people that their dreams are possible. I will inspire others to write, share, and never be afraid. My passion is writing, and I don't have a fear of it. I write as much as I can and share everything without a fear of what others may think, because I believe in myself and I believe in what I write. You know, I used to wish that I wanted to be a doctor, because a person who does that is on a clear path with steps to reach that goal. But I realized nothing in my life has ever been a clear path. I've always been creating my own. I hope you will join me on my path. I thank you for listening to my story, and I hope that I've pushed, inspired, educated, and entertained you. Thank you.